Hello, everyone. This is David John Sponheim for America's Third Party with our anti-war rally on Saturday. Every Saturday, we're going to run a show from 6 to 9 p.m. Pacific to fight the war that Barack Obama is attempting to start. Now, we've got people all over the news tonight. We're going to talk to former presidents, listening to them talk about the dangers of the military-industrial complex, like Mr. Eisenhower, our former president. He warned us of a military-industrial complex that was growing so big that it would eventually devour this country if we didn't get some political control over it. Well, guess what? We haven't gotten any political control over it. The Democrats, the Republicans are both in favor of this war. We're going to play footage from John Kerry justifying the war, from John McCain justifying the war, and boldly stating that China and Russia and Iran are not going to get involved in this conflagration, this volley of Tomahawk missiles. I just can't believe that they're that stupid that they'd want to start a war in lieu of all the other problems in the world, like the economy. Meltdown in our economy is going on right now. Everywhere in America, people are struggling to meet their minimum house payments or their rent. Everywhere in America, people are facing the disaster of not having enough money to pay their bills. You know, there's a serious meltdown in the economy. Plus, there's this Fukushima thing, the nagging reminder of the radiation spewing into the ocean at 300 tons per day that Obama hasn't even addressed. And I doubt he'll even talk about it in his upcoming speech on Tuesday, where he's going to try to continue to push this on the American people. Now, bear in mind, 91% of the American people are against the war. 91%. That's serious. That's not something we should just, flippantly talk about. This is like one of the most important things that we should discuss. I can't imagine our country engaging in a war after losing all the different engagements we've been involved in. Vietnam was a disaster. 4 million innocent Southeast Asian people were dead as a result of what we did there. And Robert McNamara, the Secretary of Defense under LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, openly stated that it was all made up, that the Gulf of Tonkin incident was all fabricated in order to start the war in Vietnam, which turned out to be a disaster. 58,000 men, mostly men, some women, died as a result of it. They could have been your father. They could have been the father of geniuses in this country, and they're all dead. And then we went on to fight yet another war in Iraq with Gulf War I, Gulf War II, and then, of course, yet another war with Afghanistan. And by the way, we didn't win any of these, and we're still involved in Afghanistan. There's no end in sight. Obama's mandate by the Democratic people were to pull out of Afghanistan, and you can clearly see Obama has ignored the mandate of the Democrats as well as the country. So we're dealing with a gossamer liar who also started a war in Libya. He, instrumental in getting total backing from NATO forces to send rebel troops who are former Al-Qaeda funding and military armaments to fight Muammar Gaddafi, ended up culminating in what appears to be the death of Chris Stevens, our ambassador in Benghazi. And there was a news story that came out about 3 weeks ago claiming that the CIA was on the ground when Chris Stevens died in Benghazi. 31 agents were, and then that story disappeared from the entire mainstream media. Now, we're talking to Candy Rain, who's broadcasting as well. She's one of our supporters. In fact, she is the Sponheim girl, and I really appreciate her support on this anti-war day. Thank you, Candy, for being here. We all feel very passionate about this. We feel intuitively that what's going on is wrong. That's why 91% of the people are against the war in Syria. So what do we have to do as a third party to stop Congress from making this horrible mistake of ratifying this war that Obama wants? Now, Obama is going to invoke the War Powers Act of 1973. He will initiate, he'll have 48 hours to start this war, and he's going to go ahead and do it, and he's going to get the blessing of the Republicans and Democrats. I'm going to be taking a little bit of the Democratic discussion right now as I play a video that appeared just a few days ago an interview with John Kerry where he's babbling and talking about that there would be no boots on the ground necessarily, and then he said there would be. They don't know what they're saying, and they want to reframe the wording so the American people will palpably accept another draft or something to that effect. Let's take a look.
A chemical weapons cache falling into the hands of al-Nusra or someone else, and it was clearly in the interests of our allies and all of us, the British, the French, and others, to prevent those weapons of mass destruction falling into the hands of the worst elements. I don't want to take off the table an option that might or might not be available to the President of the United States to secure our country.
If we said that there'd be no troops on the ground for combat purposes, that clearly would assume.
Well, assuming that in the going to protect those weapons, whether or not they have to, answer a shot in order to be secure, I don't want to speak to that. But the bottom line is this.
We're going to.
Can I give you the bottom line?
We're going to have to work.
I'm absolutely confident, Mr. Chairman, that it is easy, not that complicated, to work out language that will satisfy the Congress and the American people that there's no door open here through which someone can march in ways that the Congress doesn't want it to, while still protecting the national security interests of the country.
Yeah, I've heard this over and over again. This guy's talking in circles, like many politicians do. He's not direct. It would be nice if we had the kind of direct conflict or conversation coming from world leaders like we did back in the 1950s with Eisenhower. I got to counterbalance what John Kerry was talking about right there with some of the biggest concerns our former president had of a military-industrial complex that's spinning out of control. I'm going to bring you the Eisenhower speech right now from where it's at, where he talks about the dangers of the military-industrial complex. Now, this is a world leader. This was Eisenhower back in the 50s. Listen to this.
Resources and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
All right, that was a speech, and I'd play all of it for you if you had the time, but I know you got a short attention span. Watching YouTube is not easy, and I know that this is a show that has to be constantly changing. So Eisenhower warned us. We didn't listen. We've got massive industrial complex players like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Bechtel, Halliburton, Boeing, the list goes on and on, Northrop. All these players want to make money, and they want to deploy cruise missiles like they used in Libya. 234 cruise missiles were deployed against Muammar Gaddafi, along with 6,000 rockets. And the American people saw our country end up funding rebel al-Qaeda forces. Now, this was never addressed in the media, and we didn't do what Eisenhower said we should do, which is to question the military-industrial complex, question why the CIA was sending al-Qaeda support. When in our nation's history have we been sending rebel terrorist organizations funding until now? And clearly the American people are not willing to admit it. And ironically, John McCain was just approached recently in this video, which I'm going to play for you, where he doesn't even admit that our country has supported al-Qaeda and is currently supporting al-Qaeda in Syria. Check this out.
For 30 years.
So we do have 5 U.S. warships in the Mediterranean right now. Russia and China allegedly are sending warships as well. Russia, China, and Iran have warned the United States of catastrophic consequences if the United States attacks Syria. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that it doesn't concern me in the slightest.
And why is that?
Because they will not act, just as they didn't act when the Israelis 4 times have taken out targets inside Syria. Syria said that they would react, and they didn't. The United States is the most powerful nation in the world, and we're not going to be intimidated by Russia and China. We are not. So I guarantee you that they will not act. If we launch these strikes against Syria, they will not act.
Senator Ted Cruz said yesterday out of Texas that we should not act as Al-Qaeda's air force. The al-Nusra Front is fighting alongside the Free Syrian Army, which is directly linked to Al-Qaeda. Why was the United States fighting against Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, but now fighting alongside them in Syria?
Because your statement is totally false. Your statement could not be more false.
That isn't false. That's been well documented.
No, your statement is false. So if you want to say that it's not, I'm entitled to say your statement is false.
Okay, I'm going to break into that little discussion to further illustrate that John McCain doesn't understand even the question. He doesn't realize that, yes, the government has been outed. The media has revealed that our government has been supporting Al-Qaeda in Libya and now in Syria. So he doesn't want to acknowledge the statement from the person that just stated that we are definitely at risk. This is a classic case of our government being out of touch with reality. They're out of touch with everything we're doing and what our country's all about. They're out of touch with the sentiment of 91% of the American people that don't want a war. So we have to ask ourselves, do we want these type of people running us into the ground, killing our country, killing our young men? This basically is an illustration of how old men start war and young men have to fight them. And this is bad. And it's really, really equally bad that we aren't listening to our heart here. Our intuitive nature tells us that war will not beget peace. War will not in any way bring us peace. The idea that we can push our will on other countries is only forestalling the inevitable, and that's worldwide destruction. Because we're living in a world where they have mutually assured destruction with multiple nuclear weapons. I'm going to play a speech by President Kennedy now. Many of you have heard a little bit of this. I'm just going to give you a brief little part of it about him warning of secret societies controlling American politics. Check this out.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news.
Okay, he said a mouthful there, and that's what we need to focus on, is we cannot stifle the free press. We need to open the discussion about who's pulling the strings in Washington and why they want a war. Clearly, there's some secret motive here behind the Syrian attack. Clearly, it's not just to protect the innocents, because with an attack like the one Obama wants to do with Tomahawk missiles, there will be hundreds of thousands of civilian casualties. That happens in every single involvement we get entangled into, like Libya. We're going to see people die as a result of us striking Damascus. There are innocent people in the collateral damage area that will be hit. It's definitely going to happen. So what possible reason would they have to take down Syria? Well, I argue that puppets like John McCain and Barack Obama are just the mouthpieces of a secret society that has essentially designed a plan to start wars, to profit from cruise missiles, to continue the reign of terror over mankind, because that's something they seem to enjoy, and to ultimately have total monetary control over every country. Syria and Iran are standing in the way of that. And I must say that that could be the ultimate backlash to our nation. If we were to hit this hornet's nest straight on with tomahawks and then experience a volley of Scuds going in every direction, especially to Tel Aviv and Israel, you'd see Israel respond in kind, and you would see an interchange of potentially nuclear weapons. Tactical nukes could be used, and that whole interplay could take place among many nations. Iran could get involved because they may see Israel as in a weakened condition and decide to strike, thinking that there's an opportunity to attack at Tel Aviv, Israel. These are questions that Obama's not even asking. And here I am on the blogosphere asking some of the most profound questions out there, and no one in government is even voicing these questions. And I'm sure NORAD has worked out the possibilities as a result of a strike, but I don't believe that they've factored in the ultimate stupidity of American government officials in allowing such insanity. So Candy, let's talk about what your position is, relatively speaking, about how you as an average American are trying in your way to be vocal, because you're one of the most vocal people I know on the internet. How are you handling all this, and has it depressed you, or are you out fighting? I mean, because obviously you're in our anti-war rally, so what's your take on this whole thing?
I'm here and I'm on the internet.
You're doing your best to stop it. I know. I think I lost the second part.
I don't really think protest
is effective.
Tear down and survive for what's going to come.
Okay, hunker down. Yeah, I agree. So, folks, one thing you can do right now is you can actually write your senator and congressman. I urge you to do that. I did it with my local senator, Patty Murray. I said, do not support this war in Syria. And I urge you all to do that. Look up your senator or congressman and write them an email. That is the very least you should do at this point. But building a third party is what I believe is needed here to stop the tyranny of the two-party system and how they're controlling the fate of this country. We can get our country back, folks. We can actually bring our country closer together and unite the country. And in doing so, we can solve the problems affecting our environment, the problem of homelessness, the cost of housing. We can begin creating jobs and stimulate the small job business, where small businesses create 60% of the jobs in America. We can do that by creating this third party, relaxing laws around building your own small business, so that would create a lot of new jobs in America, and also stimulate hiring U.S. employees at a living wage. Now, there's talk about a $15 wage coming out of various states. I don't really think that's sustainable, but I'd like to see higher wages for everybody. I really would. But I believe that an infrastructure bank could do just that, offer 2% loans out straight to American citizens with U.S. businesses, so that we can get this country back on track, hiring U.S. citizens as opposed to people from other countries. So we've got a lot of things to straighten our country out here at America's Third Party, and I urge you to check out americasthirdparty.com for more information about our platform, which I think will stimulate the economic growth we need to be on the top as an economic leader in the future. All right, well, thank you everybody for participating in our recorded broadcast. We'll be on a little bit later on Monday night, 6 to 9 show starts at 6 o'clock Pacific time. We can talk about the kind of things that are going on that cause wars, the conspiracy facts that are coming out from people like Edward Snowden, who revealed that the NSA is watching us. We are being watched. And they've revealed other things, like the budget of the national security is now $52.6 billion. It's going up too every year, and so is the Department of Homeland Security budgeting. And we as a country, we're running out of money. So we'll talk about that on Monday night for Conspiracy Monday. Thanks everybody for watching this show.